Men are statistically more common as serial killers, but the percentage of female perpetrators, although lower, is significant. Aileen Wuornos is a prime example of a female serial killer. Like many male serial killers such as Henry Lee Lucas, Charles Manson, and Richard Ramirez, Wuornos suffered from severe childhood abuse and violence. She slipped through societal safety nets and resorted to murder out of desperation and anger. The movie Monster, featuring Charlize Theron in a brilliant performance, brought attention to Wuornos and garnered sympathy for her. It is important to understand that Wuornos' life was a product of her circumstances and the effects of childhood suffering, pain, and violence. While her actions were criminal, they were born out of self-defense and response to her traumatic experiences. When analyzing criminals, experts often explore their childhood for reasons behind their behavior, even though many criminals had seemingly normal upbringings. Aileen Wuornos' childhood was difficult, which explains her serial killing. Her parents, Diane Wuornos and Leo Pittman, had a violent, controlling marriage. She was born in Rochester, Michigan on February 29, 1956. Pittman kidnapped and raped a little girl and was sentenced to life. He committed prison suicide due to cellmate maltreatment. Diane, pregnant with Aileen, divorced after 2 years. Aileen's life was shaped by her fatherless childhood and Pittman's actions. Aileen Wuornos' family was troubled. Schizophrenic father influenced her negatively. When Aileen was 4, her mother left her and her siblings with their grandparents. Life with grandparents wasn't perfect. Aileen suffered more than her parents under their drinking. Her grandfather, Larry Wuornos, was an alcoholic who controlled his daughters. Aileen had a rough background. Laurie held young Aileen in an iron grip to vent his anger at his daughter, Diane's disobedience. She was brutally belted if she didn't call him sir. Her grandfather and older brother Keith raped her, ruining her life. Poor childhood. Aileen's soul broke. After prostituting at school for cigarettes, drugs, and food at 11, Aileen became pregnant at 14. Despite the father's friendship with the grandfather, nobody desired the child. Thus, majority used Aileen's services. Instead of dolls, she faced bullying, humiliation, beating, and violence. Her retaliation was inevitable. Wuornos adopted a kid she had at a 1971 Detroit shelter for unmarried women. She left school after her son's birth. Aileen was jailed after her grandma died of liver illness. Aileen returned to her grandfather's and dead grandmother's house following juvenile detention. She refused to return but had nowhere to live. Granddad opposed his dictatorship. He banned Aileen. Aileen's 15-year-old situation may be awful. She was unloved. Aileen Wuornos was penniless and had to steal and prostitute. She drank, smoked, and hitchhiked. Wuornos was 18 till 1974. She was detained for disorderly conduct, DUI, and gunshots. After years in prison, Aileen moved to Florida. Aileen, 20, met 69-year-old yacht club president Louis Gratzfell in 1976. Despite not knowing Lee's occupation, they married. Aileen benefited from her husband's fortune. Aileen found a man who loved her and could start a new life without prostitution or petty crime. But her childhood damaged her chances. Wuornos had regular bar fights and was briefly imprisoned for assault. She got a protective order after Kane attacking her spouse after her wedding. After 2 months, the marriage ended. Aileen appeared out of luck. After her brother Keith's death, she received a $10,000 insurance settlement 4 days before the divorce. Managed intelligently, this money may have brought stability. Aileen wasted her money in 2 months. Aileen wasted her new car on fines and pleasures. She appeared unfit for normal life. Her tough background led to 6 suicide attempts between 14 and 22. Her 6th attempt, a gunshot, failed. In 1981, Aileen served a year for armed robbery in Edgewater, Florida. By 1984, she was forging checks, stealing cars, having illegal firearms, and abusing and battering people. Aileen masked her life's decline behind numerous names. Aileen's adventure continued despite difficulties. More awaited her. Due to her abusive upbringing, Aileen loathed males. She saw males as a means to make quick money as an illegal traveling sex worker. Aileen fell for 24-year-old Tyria Jolene Moore in 1986. They met in South Daytona's Zodiac Bar. Tyria, a Cardi's, Ohio bartender, moved to Florida for tolerance. Tyria altered Eileen. They bonded. The couple's wandering lifestyle, sleeping in friends' residences, motels, and sometimes the woods, became renowned in their private circles after living together. Tyria wasn't hired. Eileen supported the family by stealing, robbing, and prostitution. She prostituted. Eileen was content. Lee termed it unbelievable love. Tyria evoked unimaginable emotions. Eileen eventually called Tyria her wife, but they had some rocky patches, and Tyria disapproved of her career. She tried everything to help Eileen stop prostitution when she discovered Lee was involved. But Lee was insistent. Wuornos couldn't make money any other way and didn't have time because their petty quarrels hurt others. In 1987, Daytona Beach police arrested Wuornos and others for beer bottle assault and violence in a pub. Despite misunderstandings, they stayed together for 3 years. Tyria found something terrible. On November 30th, 1989, Eileen killed a man in self-defense. Eileen killed 51-year-old Wuornos electronics firm owner Richard Charles Malloy. Malloy offered a ride in his 1977 Cadillac next to her. Mallory was a sex prostitute when Wuornos requested for money. Mallory and Wuornos drive to a remote woodland after debating the charge. This time was different for Eileen. Eileen says he raped and beat her. The plan wasn't to beat and rape her with a 9-shot 22mm pistol from her backpack. 2 left lung shots from Wuornos killed Mallory. After snatching Mallory's ID card and money, she covered his corpse with red carpet. Wuornos drove Mallory's car to the motel she and companion Tyria Moore rented. Eileen informed her friend she had borrowed a car and made a lot of money on the road. Tyria unwillingly believed her that day. After a while, Lee told Tyria that she had slain Richard Mallory, who had tried to rape her, in self-defense. She requested not to tell her anything else, shocked and afraid she would have to turn Eileen over to the authorities. Tyria spotted Eileen taking home others' things. Eileen could not explain how she received electric razors, toolboxes, briefcases, weapons, fishing gear, or watches. Tyria believed Mallory's murder was repeated and that these items belonged to deceased men. Eileen Wuornos killed to avenge her suffering. Lee chose despite having a lady. She loved the internal rage that erupted. Self-defense may have caused her first murder. 32 years ago, Richard Mallory was a thief. Sexual assault sent him to a Maryland mental hospital for 10 years. I doubt Eileen lied about being beaten and abused. Murder freed Wuornos. Eileen Wuornos killed David Spears next. Wuornos shot 47-year-old construction worker Spears 6 times in Citrus County, Florida, on June 1, 1990. His autopsy showed 2 back shootings, indicating he was fleeing Charles Karskaden. 40-year-old road worker and rodeo racer died next. Eileen shot Karskaden 9 times while helping Wuornos on his way back to pick up his fiancée. Electric blanket-wrapped bodies rotted. Wuornos pawned Karskaden's gun and had his car when found. 65-year-old merchant seaman Peter Seams died 4th. He disappeared from Jupiter, Florida to New Jersey. He was never found. Eileen left too much evidence after this murder. Eileen Wuornos killed 7 people a year. Florida killed all male drivers 40 to 65. Ted Bundy killed here 11 years ago. Eileen killing? Many think the male victims would still be alive if they hadn't cheated on their wives with prostitutes. Yes, and hopefully these killings taught many males a lesson. Still, the cops recognized a serial killer. Eileen killed whether she knew. On July 31, 1990, Troy Burrs became the 6th victim of Eileen Wuornos. Charles Humphreys and Walter Antonia were also murdered. The key to the investigation was the murder of Peter Seams, the 4th victim. Eileen and Tyria were involved in a car accident in Ocala, Florida. Eileen urged Tyria to flee while she faced the police. Witnesses provided valuable information, and police sketches circulated on TV. Eileen's fingerprint was found on a pawn shop receipt belonging to one of the victims. She was eventually caught at a biker club on a weapons warrant. Eileen confessed, possibly influenced by Tyria, who had knowledge of the crimes. Authorities used Tyria to gather evidence against Eileen. Their conversations revealed police tactics. Despite the betrayal, Tyria remained supportive and cooperated with the police. After confessing to the murders, Wuornos freed her beloved from prison. She claimed self-defense against victims who desired sex and attempted rape. The defense failed to use her mental state to save her, while the prosecution portrayed her as a cold-blooded killer. Wuornos seemed unconcerned about her death sentences. Despite betrayal, she maintained love for her friend. Supporters stood by her despite appeals from activists. After years of legal battles, Wuornos was executed on October 9, 2002. Her troubled upbringing and prison torture broke her. Wuornos' story is one of tragedy and isolation. Let us know your views in the comments section, and do like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel for more such content.